Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Chris Debeau. I'm coming to you today from Halifax, Nova Scotia, located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Like many or most of you, I'm a person living with chronic pain. I've done so for about 40 years. My particular brand of pain is an inflammatory arthritis called ankylosing spondylitis. It's a mouthful. I've been working as a chronic pain patient partner, educator, and advocate for about 15 years. And I feel incredibly fortunate and happy to play a small role in this conference. Because I have ankylosing spondylitis, many of you will probably be able to relate to this. I find it hard to stay still. So hopefully my moving around won't be too distracting. So today we have two main sessions of about an hour each with some fun and interesting stuff in between. We'll start with Dawn Gibson, who will share with us her work building chronic illness communities, which is exactly what we're trying to do here. We'll then have a 1 hour break, followed by a fireside chat led by Kate Nicholson, who'll be joined by Ola Ojuwumi, Charis Hill, and Lindsay Baran. There's a 1 hour break between those sessions. And as with every day, there's an optional 30-minute guided gentle movement session led by Neil Pearson, who is a physiotherapist that a lot of people here know. He's been incredible at guiding us through all kinds of different levels of movement for all abilities. I highly recommend it. It's everything you can do it standing up, sitting down, or laying flat on your back. It's great. Within that 1 hour break, there's also an opportunity to join your peers in breakout rooms. We call them water coolers. One water cooler has a pre-assigned discussion topic, and the other is simply open for whatever you want to talk about. So the general water cooler always has 2 Pain BC support services staff who are available to connect with. You just join that call and you can message them. Excuse me. So a couple final details before we start, actually more than a couple. Please remember that the conference has been designed for and by people living with pain. While it's open to everyone, we've done our best to design it to create a brave and safe space for people who live with pain. I've personally found many of the sessions emotional, and there's a real possibility that some of you may feel some big feelings here today, feelings about your pain, about your life in general. Some have chosen to share those feelings in the chat, and others keep it to themselves. Either way, know that there are supports and resources here for you. If support staff can't connect with you in real time online, please go to the resources listed in the lobby area of FeedLoop, one of these ways. Also, we really hope that there are researchers and clinicians here who want to learn from those of us who live with pain. If there are, we just ask that you spend your time at the water coolers listening to people who live with pain rather than using these spaces for research or other purposes. Each session has a chat to the right-hand side of the video stream in FeedLoop. If for some reason you have to join by Zoom, and some people do, you'll only have access to the Q&A function in Zoom. We did this to minimize distractions to presenters, but just rest assured all of your questions and comments get through. The chat in FeedLoop and the Q&A in Zoom are being monitored while the session's live. So the questions you post will be shared with the presenters through these two functions, time permitting, of course, and we've been pretty good at getting at everyone's questions. Closed captioning is available to viewers who join the session through Zoom. Turn this on by selecting the CC or the closed captioning button at the bottom of the screen. And then you can select the language you'd like these captions to appear in. Okay, we're almost there. I need to quickly mention that a surprise construction project started up this week right out across the street from me. If the background noise gets too distracting, Delane Linkowich has graciously offered to step in and host. So if I suddenly turn into Delane, don't be alarmed. Thank you so much, Delane. Okay, so we're about to start. One last thing, we'd like to thank the conference's sponsors. Now this is a mouthful, so give me a second. Pain BC, the Strategy for Patient-Oriented Research, or SPORE, the Chronic Pain Network, those are the easy ones, the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, Institute of Musculoskeletal Health and Arthritis, and the Partnership for the Engagement of Patients with Pain Research Project. Thank you so much for your support. Okay, with that all out of the way, we can start. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Dawn Gibson, who will talk to us about building authentic disability and chronic illness communities, exactly what we're trying to do here. Dawn is a writer, health advocate, and family caregiver. Her full bio is available in the speaker section of Feedloop, as all the speakers are. Suffice it to say, she's an accomplished community builder in the pain world and represents our community through media availability, patient engagement work, and her Twitter presence. Dawn, thanks for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Chris. It's a pleasure and an honor to join Pain Canada today. I'm here representing National Pain from the US, although we function as an international organization with Canadian members. I'm also representing my platform, Spoonie Chat, and Black women with spondyloarthritis. As Chris said, I am a writer, health advocate, community organizer, and family caregiver. I've also worked as a chaplain for pre-K through grade 8 students and for college students. And I believe that that is an important part of how I function on social media and how my work is geared toward attending to people's spiritual needs and understanding themselves with pain and chronic illness and disability. I have spondyloarthritis. I've been living with it since 2001. On a daily basis, I experience pain, stiffness, fatigue, limited range of motion, and just the uncertainty, the daily uncertainty about what my body and I will be able to do. And after, I guess it was about 10 years of illness, I got involved in Health Social through Twitter. My friends had to essentially draft me onto the platform because I was so nervous about it, because it seemed big and scary and difficult. And throughout that process, I came to understand that there were many unmet needs around pretty much any health problem there is. There's unmet need of understanding that the illness exists, understanding that it's serious, understanding how to deal with it, on difficulties aging with it, all of that. And I wanted to get going to do something about that. I started Spoonie Chat in 2013. That's an auspicious year because of Lupus Chat. My friends over at Lupus Chat also started in that year. And initially my goal was just to do something for arthritis patients and anyone else who might be seeing a rheumatologist. I didn't know what that something would be, other than to try and make people feel less lonely and less fearful, and ideally help people who don't already know, help them understand that they're disabled, because that's a big problem. A lot of people are disabled and don't know, and that is down to issues with representation and understanding the full spectrum of disability. And a lot of people, they really need someone to come to them and say, hey, you are disabled. This is a big deal. We need to do something to help you thrive with disability. So a little bit about NPAC. We've been working, or we've been launched for about 2 years now, and we work as a national policy and legislative advocacy organization trying to reshape the way that patients experience pain. So the whole environment that we experience pain in is cultural and legal. And we like working on both of those things to improve things for pain patients. When I founded Spoonie Chat in 2013, I was doing so partially by the inspiration of Christine Misrandino, who is a lupus patient who founded the spoon theory. And for those of you who don't understand the spoon theory or what spoonies are, basically Christine was at this diner with her friend, and her friend asked her, what is it like to live with fibromyalgia and lupus and other health concerns? And the only thing they had to really demonstrate or facilitate the conversation was the silverware on the table with them. So she used some spoons and some forks and everything, and she made an analogy between those items and the ability, the energy, the vitality, the autonomy that bodies have that allow us to do things throughout the day, to allow us to do what we need to do and what we want to do. I think of it basically as money or resources. So a spoon is the same as a dollar or, you know, whatever scale you want to give. So you have an amount that you can spend. But the problem with being a spoonie is that that amount is being debited and you don't know when it's going to be debited or how it's going to be debited. And so there's all that uncertainty. And then some things are very expensive to do. Like for me, folding my laundry could really knock me out for the rest of the day. So that would use a lot of spoons. Talking on the phone with my friends, not so much, you know, so it just kind of depends on the spoonie. So we've been going for 9 years, and there have been a lot of changes over those years, and you know, a turnover in our membership. Over time, our range of diagnoses have expanded dramatically, which is super exciting because we started as a rheumatology chat. Now it's pretty much anything that makes you sick enough to be life-altering or life-limiting. And then we have some people who they're seeking a diagnosis, and we support them with that. Right now, we're not sure what's going to happen with our beloved platform, Twitter. You know, will it remain? Will it remain in a format that we'll find useful? You know, all of that. So I'll tell you a little bit about Twitter chats, and then we'll talk a little bit about Twitter, and then move on to some other things. You might wonder, if you're not on Twitter or you've never been to a Twitter chat, why do chats matter? And I didn't understand what chats were until I saw one. One day I saw these dietitians talking, and I think it was like non-nutritive sweeteners or something like that. And I just scrolled in and I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is a structured conversation. This is a way to say things, but it's still open. You know, other people can come in into the questions, the structured questions and format that the host has provided. This seems like a great way to get something done. So I attended it a few times and recruited some people to help me out in just founding it, you know, getting enough people there so that it seemed like something was happening. And what we were able to accomplish by doing that is to elevate the spoon theory so a lot of people could see it. We were able to draw people in who were just kind of loitering on Twitter and wondering, oh, is there someone I can talk to? And, you know, all of that. And then we started, as time went on, we started building conversations, intentional conversations around pain, around stiffness, reduced range of motion, social isolation, the deep sadness and alienation that can come from being constantly criticized about our weight, about how we look, about whatever. You know, if there's something to be criticized about, you know, people will find a way to do it to us, right? And I came to see that Twitter was the platform for me. The way that I wanted to interact with people to help them get information, but then also to help elevate their views and ideally connect those understandings and experiences to researchers. Twitter, you know, was the way. So now that we are dealing with uncertainty on the platform, I literally have no idea what we're going to do. I have been considering where to take my community, you know, what directions to lead us. I'm getting close to a decision, but at the end of the day, I don't think that Twitter can be replaced because everything is out in the open. So people can come back and search it later. Like I have people contacting me for about 10-year-old tweets, asking me, oh, is this still happening? Is this a thing? There's nothing else like that. So I am very worried about what we're going to do, but we will have to do something. And the main things that are irreplaceable about Twitter are that there are very few barriers to entry, assuming that a person can read either without assistance or using a screen reader or some other device. You just do it. The other thing is that it's beautifully disruptive, because patients can just come barging in all kinds of places. And I love when we barge in, so, and we can represent ourselves. So that makes me so happy. But no matter what we do, as we adjust to the future of Twitter or the future without Twitter, we're going to be dealing with a lot of personal disruption. We're going to have to learn new technologies. Some people will have a very difficult time doing that. And I don't say this as a criticism. This is just structural. Some people have a harder time learning. They may not have the support that they need. And Twitter was so easy for them to use. And they've been using it for a decade or more, that pivot is going to be a sharp one. It's going to be very difficult. So I've been thinking about what kind of website to do for us, maybe a newsletter, podcast, or we may have to choose a new app, which I'm nervous about, because that is a leap that can only be made once or twice for a community. It's going to be kind of heavy. So now to the title, Becoming Butterflies, or we could call it Becoming Kintsugi Butterflies. I am all about butterflies. I raise them every year, and I take pictures of them when I release them, and they're basically all dedicated to our people, because I believe that we should have something beautiful to look at, and there's nothing more beautiful than butterflies. So I want you to, if you want to, close your eyes and think of a butterfly. It could be any butterfly. And then think about, do you know what kind it is? How did this butterfly come to you? And if you want, you can put it in the Q&A function or the conference platform if you want to say anything about the butterfly that came to your imagination. Butterflies are just like the rest of us. They have very specific needs for food, shelter, and raising their young. Most butterflies can only eat one food, or their caterpillars, their young, can only eat one food. If they don't have that food, they will die. And if that gets severe enough, if the shortage of their host plant gets severe enough, the species will go extinct. I'm holding up a seed packet for fennel. This is the plant that my very first caterpillar was found on in 2016. He was a swallowtail caterpillar, and he was super cute. Sadly, he didn't make it, but that was the first time I raised a butterfly, or tried to raise a butterfly. And it taught me so much. So they start on their host plant as a fertilized egg. They hatch out as caterpillars, and the caterpillar uses that host plant for food and shelter, and that's their whole world. Throughout the life cycle, they molt, which is literally a process of blowing off their skin, like Incredible Hulk style. I do not recommend watching it. They're going to molt 4 to 5 times. They will go into a chrysalis, which many people call a cocoon, which is a self-contained home, a home they make out of their own body. So they're essentially pregnant with themselves, which is like a little creepy. And then ideally, they're going to come out and be a butterfly and fly away. So if you think about the host plant and the caterpillar and the butterfly, there are analogies, many analogies for our work on health, social, on disability community organizing. We have to find a platform. We have to find somewhere to be, and we have to find how to be. We have to find our voice. So I would call that kind of the caterpillar stage. We have to molt a bunch of times because our understanding of ourselves must be improved, ideally moving away from ableism, moving away from all the isms. And then we're finding a voice, and ideally we're going to find a shared voice. We're going to work together in the community. Caterpillars are, and butterflies are also, this is so hard to say, kintsugi, because like every few days they are broken. Their skin breaks open and they struggle. They really struggle, and they have to keep growing, and they have to rest, and they have to find their way. So I was really excited to see that kintsugi was the theme for this year's Pain Canada conference, because it just seems natural for our people. I have come up with a couple different themes, what I feel are crucial themes for organizing health, social, and disability communities. And these are things I've noticed over, I guess, I've been an organizer for like 11 years now in one way or another. The first set of things are going to be coming from the inside, and then the second will be dealing with outside and collaboration. So for me personally, I believe that our self-care is a type of leadership. And if you look at my media tab on my Twitter, or if you look on the timeline, a lot of people agree with me. They talk about the things they do to take good care of themselves because they deserve to be well, no matter how their bodies have betrayed them, no matter if other people don't agree that this is a priority. They're showing this to the world. And to me, that has made all the difference, because if I didn't see people doing this, I wouldn't be doing it. I had no way of finding out anything really about living with spondyloarthritis, or finding a community, or that I was disabled. Without this community, I wouldn't have known. And over time, this activism, this public activist stance of self-care and self-love, it changes lives, because other people are on that same journey that the leadership has been on. Although I would argue that we're all leading together. So even somebody who just, maybe they just have been diagnosed with long COVID, they're coming into leadership at some point. The other thing that we focus a lot on is diet and meeting needs. And that is something that is countercultural. That is something that it takes a lot of courage to do this in public, because people always have something to say, but it's something that must be said, and it's something that must be done. Another important theme is normalizing accommodations and appropriate self-care. And this goes for chronic pain and all disabilities. For chronic pain, our community definitely works on normalizing seeking pain care in a world that tells us not to seek pain care, in a world that tells us to kind of gut it out, or maybe we should just gaslight ourselves into saying that we don't hurt and that it's not affecting our lives. The other way that we're normalizing disability and accommodations is that we celebrate when people get mobility aids, when people get wheelchairs, when people get new braces, or like anything that they use to help themselves. We celebrate that rather than saying, oh, are you sure you need that? Are you sure you're ready to use a wheelchair? We're excited. We want everybody to put streamers on their wheelchairs if it will make them happy and will sustain them in some way. I also believe strongly in showing the use of disability accommodations in travel, which is why almost every trip that I go on, I will live tweet the trip from the time the car service picks me up until pre-boarding and getting off my plane, whatever, because we have to take up space. Disabled people deserve to be out in society. And one way we can take up space is by taking pictures that take up space on the timeline. So that's been really, really important. The other thing that is crucial to the work that we do and will continue to do is to elevate the worthiness of our people to have everything that is beautiful, joyful, and good. That's why I raise butterflies. That, and I totally love having butterflies around, but I raise them for our people more than anything else. And this involves a lot of elevating our worthiness involves speaking up about every aspect of our lives, within our own boundaries and all of that. But it's just something we have to do. That is what our movement is about. Now, switching from inside to outside, I'll say that community organizers are often approached, and even individuals are often approached by researchers, corporations, foundations, political organizations, anybody looking for something. And they're seeking out what they might call our valuable insights or participation. And sometimes they come with a respectful attitude, but it doesn't always go great. A lot of times people come barging in to community spaces and they're not even thinking about whether we want to talk to them. And that's probably the first step. So start with consent. Consider, does anybody want to talk to you about your thing? And if you don't know that they do, then maybe work on that. Figure that out, because the community doesn't owe access. We're going, if we work with someone, we're going to be talking about the most intimate, personal, sometimes painful details of our lives. And that requires consent, and an enthusiastic consent, just like the other kind of consent should be enthusiastic. Then the next thing to consider is collaboration. Is the organization approaching us as equals or comrades, or are they just assuming that we should so gratefully participate in what they're doing because it's a good cause or whatever? I mean, everybody's a good cause at some point. That doesn't mean that we should help you. So something to think about. Equity is also a concern. I know I'm not the only one that has been approached to work for free by people with full retirement, the most amazing benefits, all kinds of things. And not only do they want me to work for free, but they want to take all kinds of pictures, and then they want me to sign away the rights to my image or whatever. I mean, this is a lot. And what do my community or I get in the end, of all of that? Will we have access to the product? Will we benefit from it? There's all those questions. The other thing to consider is, do not ever approach disabled people for a quick turnaround at the last minute. Our bodies do not work like that, and it's just disrespectful. Another issue that I have encountered is hijacking. This was years ago now, but something like this has happened about 5 times, where an outside organization that doesn't know me, does not know my community, will come and host a chat on my tag, or will literally try and take everything I worked for, and they'll say, oh, well, we're just trying to help the community. No, that is so shady and disgusting. So if you're going to be entering a space, it's important to understand who is there and how they are using it, and if they want to be involved with you. If you're not sure about all of that, then it's best not to do it. The other thing to think about, and I'm going to use one more prop, is that there's lots of stuff happening under the surface. So I'll give you an example. A lot is hidden. I have no idea how many buttons are in this jar. My sister Danica kindly sent me this jar of buttons that she saved, because she knows that I love all kinds of fun buttons on my knit and crochet projects. It can be easy to assume that we know what's happening from the tweets or comments on a website or something like that. But we don't know unless we're in contact with people in that community, unless we understand what their goals are, unless we understand some of the ways in which they've been harmed and what their boundaries are, we don't know what's happening. So that is very important to consider as we move through the space. So the next thing I'd like to talk about are specific techniques to accomplish our goals. So we have goals of consent, we have goals of mutual thriving, we have goals of celebrating and elevating the worthiness and beauty of our people and our community. But how do we actually do this stuff? Because it sounds little pie in the sky. And it begins by recognizing that nobody is perfect or born with everything that they need to know. So it's important to give room to grow, along with accountability for our actions. Over time, I've noticed that several principles seem to help my peers and I move in the way that we want to be moving in the space. The first is that we must refrain from lateral ableism. Lateral ableism is a delicious, delicious temptation because ableism saturates our society. So it's like a programmed instinct to want someone else to go under the bus so that we don't have to go under there. And it will just slip out of our mouths at times. So knowing that the lateral ableism is a risk and preparing for that in advance is good. So some dynamics that are involved with lateral ableism include pitting pain patients versus use disorder patients. And I understand that we might feel the need to protect ourselves from the stigma that anybody living with use disorder is going to be facing, and that it will feel like a self-defense. But at the end of the day, people who are going after use disorder patients, they probably don't care much about pain patients either, or if they do, it's going to be quite conditional and quite limited. So we have to think of that, and instead of going against each other, think about what are the ways that we can work together and everybody gets what they need. Another dynamic might be arthritis patients versus folks with developmental disabilities. And I mean, it could be anybody really, but there can be this idea that we have to prove that we're not like those other people. And that's not good. And it doesn't go anywhere good. And at a minimum, it's a waste of our time. So we have to stay away from that. And then we have to think about people who are perceived as being healthy or typical against people who have genetic disorders. There is a lot of pressure put on us to look healthy. There's a lot of pressure put on us to live up to so-called certain standards and that kind of thing. But all this does is distract from the idea that everybody is frail or will be frail, and everybody needs care or will need care. So that's something to think about. And I know I've just scratched the surface of lateral ableism, but we should be centering lateral ableism whenever we can. The next thing is we're living together in community, because we are kind of living our lives together on social media. Is we should probably step back from trying to win arguments. There's a lot of reasons for it. One of the main ones is you might just be arguing with a troll who wants to wear you out. And it will be mission accomplished if you spend all night going back and forth with this guy. But the other thing is that when we get into these interpersonal or engineered disputes, people dig in. And we might even dig in and not listen to a few valid points that somebody has to say. But as we dig in, it's impossible to learn anything from the situation. And we may be doing ourselves and our community harm by behaving in this way. Reputation management is also an issue. Social media, social media is a constant, instant publishing situation is good and it's bad. It's good because we can get out our point of view and resources with very few barriers, but it's also true that we can get out really bad words and bad ideas with very few excuse me, very few barriers. So we have to control ourselves, in my opinion anyway, and limit tweeting when we're emo, limit tweeting when we're angry, or that kind of thing. If you look at my tweets, I've deleted very few tweets over the years since 2011, which I kind of regret at times. But you won't find very many controversial or mean-spirited tweets. I mean, I've had my moments, but there's not a lot there. Now, I guess raise your hand if you think that means I've never been angry since 2011. I've never been angry at all. I am a person with a very bad temper who loves bacon and loves to swear. I'm just gonna get that out there. That's where I'm at, you know. So bacon's not a secret, but you know, I'm very careful with all of this. It's not easy. There are times where I literally have to shut down every device in my house so I don't say something terrible. So something to think about. The other thing that I believe is important, an important technique for effective emotional leadership, and this comes from my chaplaincy background, is we have to have boundaries around our emotional needs. So the communities that we're leading don't exist to meet our emotional needs. And it can get messy on social because a lot of times our all the hubs and spokes of our lives will kind of, you know, converge on a particular app or whatever, and it can get messy. And we may not necessarily even keep touch with our old communities, maybe because we've been rejected, or maybe because interacting on apps like Twitter it just works better for us for some reason. But if there is a collapse of boundaries between all the parts of our lives, very bad things are going to happen, both in terms of our leadership and what happens in our communities. And part of this this issue of boundaries and meeting emotional needs is figuring out how much time to take off from not only social media, but how much time to take away from advocacy if that's required. I've had several hiatuses over the last few years, both to attend to my personal health, and you know, I'm not doing a whole lot right now because I am assisting a relative with recovery from cancer. So that's just limits that I have to have in place. It's very important to bring others along as well, as we're thinking about our leadership and what we ultimately are looking to accomplish. For me, I believe that it's important that every patient has adequate care, every patient is represented, and every patient feels loved. But that doesn't mean that I'm the only one who can do that. It doesn't mean that I even need to be involved with everything that is happening either in rheumatology Twitter, dementia Twitter, skin cancer Twitter, you know, whatever. I don't need to be involved with all of it. I am in a position now to elevate some less well-known diagnoses and the way marginalized communities experience them. And so I work on that. Some examples might be gastroparesis, which my uncle dealt with at the end of his life. And I know a lot of people through Twitter who have gastroparesis, men with fibromyalgia. Men with fibromyalgia experience unmet needs at every step of seeking care and seeking community, and post-cancer pain. A lot of people after cancer are left with serious issues with pain, serious issues with limited range of motion and mobility, there isn't nearly enough of a focus on this or an understanding that this is serious, that this is life altering. So when we're thinking about how the community should grow, we need to think about not only what our personal goals are, but who else is out there that could use some help. And I say this as someone who has received so much help and so much encouragement from the mainstream disability community, from arthritis communities. It's been amazing. It's been wonderful. And so I'm so grateful, and I just want to give back. The other thing that I spend a lot of time doing, and it has really allowed me to improve the reach of my advocacy, is doing media availability. That means talking to reporters for their stories, or sometimes recruiting reporters to write stories about particular communities from, either your point of view, or to get somebody else's point of view taken care of. And this can be frustrating at times because you can go all the way through all the interviews and everything, and you think you've got it. This story is going to come out, and then the producer pulls the plug, or the reporter ghosts you, or that kind of thing, and that's frustrating. But it is just part of this world. But this media availability does change how any diagnosis is perceived. And in my opinion, it's worth the time. Some people might find another type of advocacy a better use of their time, but you just got to find your thing. I didn't do it in the beginning. I didn't have the access. I didn't have the platform or any of that, or the reputation for it. Now I do, and it's something I do at least once a month, sometimes on a weekly basis. Just depends what's happening. So as we talked about the need for boundaries and self-control as we use social media, it's important to think about what our example in the community means. And I can say that in Spoonie Chat, we've been blessed to have very few difficulties, very few fights or anything like that. And I think one of the reasons is that people understand by the way that I behave that that's not what we're doing here. Now, we've had trolls and that kind of thing, particularly the anti-straw people. We also had a run-in with some type of bots from Iran. I don't know. That was weird. I don't even know. But generally, when people come into the community, they understand that we're going to speak to each other with respect. That it's okay if you can't be around. That's okay. You can come back next time. That kind of thing. But when people see the way that you behave and the way that the community behaves, they're going to make a decision about what they want to be involved with, and kind of proceed from there. Another thing that has really helped, another technique that has really helped our community grow, the Spoonie Chat community, is to have a consistent approach. So we meet most Wednesdays, unless we're on hiatus, at 8 p.m. Eastern. And chat is going to run for about an hour, although sometimes we hang around after. The questions are all going to come from my account. These days we're threading them from my account, so people have an easy way of getting back to the information if they get lost, or they might want to answer the questions later, that kind of thing. The other thing is, even though we do change topics from time to time, we're going to stay on some bread and butter things. So there's going to be self-care, how to do well with your doctor's appointments, how to handle yourself in terms of emotional self-care on social media. And then when our people are out at conferences, that kind of thing, we're going to be trying to make sure people can get whatever information that is coming out of those conferences. I used to run a kind of an infotainment chat called Blur Chat, and that was good. I enjoyed doing it, but in some ways it gave me bad habits because it was a very fast pace. And with the infotainment space, you kind of have to flood the zone with everything. Like just flooding with all this stuff to keep people interested. That is the exact opposite of what Spoonies want or need. So over the years, I had to unlearn a lot of that. And that took some time. So just a few more things. As we're thinking about community, whether it's building, rebuilding, shifting our community, it's important to never forget the slowest folks. You will notice on the timeline that there's people who are tweeting a lot, people who are active a lot, and it can be tempting to cater to them. But that is kind of ableism. There are some people who they might only tweet once in a while. They might never tweet at you, but you'll see some retweets or something. These people may be dealing with brain fog. They may be in a situation where their internet is super slow, so they can't do a lot. So they're going to be more watching, that kind of thing. We can't leave anybody behind. So think of the slowest people who have the highest barriers to participation, the most difficulties with their lives. And if you can include them, you can include everybody. But if you don't include them, you're not including everybody. Another thing to think about is the need to integrate into the wider disability community. This can be an emotional leap because many of us, particularly with chronic pain, have come from outside the disability community. Maybe we grew up without a disability. Maybe we grew up in typical health, or we grew up in a way, maybe with enough resources or whatever, that the challenges were not as severe. Or maybe we're disabled, but kind of secretly, and other people don't know. So it can feel difficult integrating into a movement where people are visibly disabled. Maybe we don't want to take away from what they're experiencing. Maybe we don't know what to do or how to approach it. That's fine, but you got to get going because we need everybody together, as many people together as possible, working to solve issues around chronic pain, working to solve issues around any possible disability, and to make sure that we're hearing from the most perspectives and we have access to the best information, and we all are able to teach and we all are able to learn. But if we are overly segmented, then we're not going to be achieving that. And the last thing to think about is it's important to celebrate our life. We need to celebrate our lives as they are now, because that's what we have. That's what we're living. And there are so many wonderful things about being alive. And even though chronic pain has changed everything about my life and the way that I live and what I'm able to do, I'm still grateful. I'm absolutely grateful to be here, to be alive, to be talking with all of you, and to have my Twitter followers, and to be able to travel to conferences. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I didn't go to any conferences during the pandemic, but to be doing all of this. And so I won't tell you to be grateful. I won't tell you exactly what to do or how to do it. But I do believe that it's important that we celebrate our people, because we deserve that. So whether you raise and release butterflies, whether you're making the world's most beautiful gluten-free cakes, or maybe you make one that looks like someone sat on it, whatever it is, that's wonderful. And no celebration is too small. So I think it's time to open it up to questions, see what the community has for us.
Thanks, Dawn. That was incredibly inspiring. Thank you very much. And just for the record, I like to swear while I eat bacon. So aside from spondyloarthropathy, we have something in common.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a few really great questions here. I'll just share a comment that came in early on. when we were doing the butterfly exercise. Basically, the person said that they envisioned a monarch and they were inspired by how far it travels every year and the strength in that. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
That is awesome. Yeah, they fly just forever and ever. I have always wondered if anybody I released made it back to Mexico or California. I don't know for sure, but I see them sometimes and their wings are actually disintegrating. Like,
yeah,
it looks like someone's been chewing on them, but that's just the wings just, they're out in the sun and the rain and the wind and whatever, and they just start coming apart and they're just flying. It definitely gives me feelings whenever I see them.
For sure. Here's a question. So in a community I'm part of, there are some individuals who are very competitive to the point of punching down. Do you have any advice to offer in this type of situation?
Yeah. Punching down is a rough one. When I see someone that I know well enough, that I feel like I've got a good bond with, and they're punching down, I'm gonna ask them, hey, are you all right? Or, what's happening with this? Or is there a way, like, what are you trying to accomplish? And sometimes that can break it up, but at the end of the day, a lot of this comes down to moderation within the space. So if a group doesn't have mods who are checking this stuff out and sometimes banning people, then that's a real problem. And nobody is owed engagement. So if a space is not good for you, skip it. I know it can be difficult. I'll say this, with spondyloarthritis, we have a very big race issue. And one of the articles that is in the link tree pinned to my Twitter profile is about that, and how the spondyloarthritis community is divided in the sense that there is not really a place for many Black people or Black women because the disease is seen as a white disease. And I do not participate in very many groups anymore. I will take a peek every once in a while to monitor where things are headed and, what are the big questions people have or whatever. But I have chosen not to expose myself to that kind of thing because I only have one life to live. So not doing it.
And I know that's definitely a concern of how Twitter may change too, is less moderation and censoring. So another comment came in: despite taking me to some very dark places, my pain unlocked a richness in life that I never would have experienced if I didn't experience this.
Yeah. It is interesting the way that pain can make us more compassionate. Pain can teach us so much about our bodies. And I think the good thing that has come for me from being chronically ill and disabled is the amazing people I've met. I mean, I wish none of us were suffering, but if we have to suffer, I'm glad to suffer with such amazing people.
Yeah, there's an old Melissa Etheridge song called Precious Pain, and that always spoke to me. Yeah. Another question came in. In your community, how do you deal with getting asked for medical advice, if you do?
Yeah, one thing that I do whenever I'm doing my media availability, because inevitably the reporter wants to know exactly what I do for my treatments, is I do not disclose very much about my treatments. I'll disclose self-care to a degree, but I make sure that people aren't seeing me as a source of medical information. The other thing is I'm open with people about the fact that at present, giving medical advice requires a license, and I do not have that. And I don't have malpractice insurance. So it's not safe for me, and it's not safe for a community to engage in that. The one way to kind of go on the edge of the page is to encourage people to seek the guidelines. So as an arthritis patient, one of the first things I'll seek out is the guidelines from the American College of Rheumatology. And so that's going to give me the kind of mainstream view on the best way to diagnose, treat, and manage an illness that is covered in rheumatology. And that's helpful because I can understand what is the starting off point? What is the, like, how does my care plan and the way that my doctor or other provider is functioning, how does my care plan compare with that? And if it compares poorly, then that's important information because maybe this is a person who cannot do what I need. So maybe that's the problem more than the fact that people are seeking this pure medical advice. Now, that said, some people are without care and are going to be desperate and all of that. So it's something to keep in mind, but stick firmly to your boundary about not giving medical advice without a license of some kind.
Yeah, good advice. My favorite is getting advice from people who don't have chronic pain or arthritis.
Yes, they're always ready. They always have something.
Yeah, something they read in a magazine or something. A practical question from Jenny. Could you please repeat when the Spoonie group meets?
Oh yeah, we meet most Wednesday evenings starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. So all you have to do, hop on Twitter and put in the Spoonie chat tag, or you can come to me. My account is at Dawn M as in Mary Gibson, Gibson. And all the questions will come from there.
Great. Another question, what does punching down mean?
Okay, so when two people who are equal are having a dispute and they're kind of going back and forth, I guess you would call that equal punching. I'm not sure. Punching down is when someone who has a very large platform and perhaps a lot of followers who are going to come after whoever they point their followers at, when they're targeting that person either for a lot of responses, replies, harassment, calling them names. If we were to call someone a particular name, then that is a signal to others to come and bother them. But the other thing to think about with punching down, there's a difference. Some people understand things better than other people. So you can tell in a conversation, I think, for the most part, if someone understands what they're talking about, or if they're in good shape to be having a conversation. So if somebody is not in good shape to be having a conversation, we can back away to avoid ending up in a punching down situation. And I usually will try to conciliate, like if things are getting out of control. With talking to somebody, I'll be like, oh yeah, looks like, anybody can have a bad night, whatever. I think I hear my mother calling, I gotta go.
Got you.
Yeah.
We're almost out of time, but there's one last question. I'm going to answer it or ask it real quick.
Sure.
For Maria, we really wanted this conference to be a launching pad for community building and amplifying the voices of people who live with pain. Do you have any advice, quick advice, for us as we try to carry forward the energy and momentum of that this event has generated?
Thank you for your question. That's an excellent way to close out. I would say to gather up as many people who want to come. So every possible diagnosis group, everybody who is friend of a friend of a friend, and listen as hard as you possibly can. And not that you haven't listened, but listen harder and more to as many people as you possibly can and find out where are those holes, like what are the gaps, and then kind of explore those and program around that.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, what a great talk. So yeah, we're gonna take a break for an hour. If you'd like to participate in the guided movement session, please head over to that. The water cooler discussion, you join through the exhibitors area of FeedLoop. And there's an open discussion, like I said earlier, and a guided discussion on the system and self-advocacy. And we'll start the next session in an hour, at whatever time that is where you are. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.